I would like your comments on how to escalate when the girl gives me nothing on a date. When she seems too logical with her questions and doesn't respond to my flirting, even though sometimes I finally get the girl after kissing her without any previous IOIs. I'd like to know how is that from the women's perspective. Okay, so that's interesting. So you have to be. It's always interesting when I get these kind of questions. So I would love to be able to follow up and get to know what you mean. Because when you say the girl's giving you nothing, there's a whole lot of different versions of giving you nothing. All right, one version of giving you nothing is sitting on my phone, like texting and ignoring you during the entire date. Right, and that's ridiculous. That would like basically never happen on a date because she came to meet you for the date. Right, so that's highly unlikely. And if it did happen, I would basically just like tease her relentlessly about it until she either puts her phone away or leaves. Because it's like incredibly rude behavior. It's not socially normal on any level, and that's a date that's not going to go anywhere anyway, so you have nothing to lose. But that's what actually giving you nothing on a date would look like. When you say giving you nothing, I assume you mean something else, which I assume you mean you're just having sort of a logical, sort of normal conversation, right? And in that case, there's a wide range of possibilities because it's quite possible that so here's some of the possibilities. One possibility is you framed the date completely wrong. You framed it in like this very friendly way, and she showed up thinking it was friend to friend, and she came out friend to friend, and you haven't done anything to make it not friend to friend. And so your main thing there is either in the setting up of the date or once you're on the date, you need to start showing intent. And I'd say go back to my answer to the first question, which is start doing the very, very small escalation moves, escalate on all the different channels, not just the physical, et cetera, et cetera. And that can maybe get you out of that. The next reason why it might be logical and platonic is that she likes you a lot. She just doesn't know how to escalate it, and you need to give her some way to escalate, which means you need to, again, start hammering away just very slightly in terms of escalations. And in that case, I would say escalating the conversation topic would be a really, really good way to go. I'll give you guys an interesting there's an old school pickup routine. It's called the question game. And basically what the question game is, it's truth or dare minus the dare. It's truth or truth. And it basically just goes this way. I ask you a question, you have to answer honestly. You ask me a question, I have to answer honestly. Not the greatest game in the world. The reason why it works in pickup is that, or on a date in particular, is that what you're going to do with your questions is you're going to gradually escalate the conversational topic, right? So there's all these topics that are non-sexual but are related to sex. So, for example, like drinking is not sex, but there's a relationship between drinking and partying and sex, right? Tattoos and piercings are not sex, but there is a relation between doing things to, I don't want to say exhibitions, because it's not really exhibitions, but doing things that are like trying to make your body more beautiful in a way, or trying to be a little bit like showing off your body, etc., and sex, right? There's also a correlation between willingness to put a needle in your body and willingness to put a penis in your body, right? There's like partying. Partying is related to sex. Travel, especially travel alone for a girl, an adventure, is related to sex. So there's all these ideas of things that are sexual in nature. Drug use related to sex. Getting in trouble, like doing things that you're not supposed to as a kid, or getting in trouble with the law. Those kind of things also related to sex because they're both considered kind of not the most politically correct sort of things, right? They're both like a little bit taboo. So anyway, all these things are related to sex. So if you start off on a topic like one of these, and then you can gradually escalate the topic closer and closer to sex. And the nice thing is when you ask a question that's on a certain topic, she's going to follow you with the question. And if you're having a normal conversation where you're on kind of the same vibe and the same wavelength, if you ask a question on a sexually related area, she's going to ask a question on a sexually related area. And then you can go a little bit further and she'll probably match it. You go a little bit further and she'll match it. She may even exceed it. And so by going that way, you gradually get to a place where you're essentially talking sexually and talking about sex. And the path from talking about sex to having sex is a very short path. So that kind of a topical game almost can work for you. And you could even say, like, you could introduce the question game on your date if you really wanted to. I'm not a big fan of being quite that formulaic. I'm not a big fan of, like, being like, hey, let's play the question game. But you could if you wanted to. What I'm more a big fan of is taking that same idea that occurs in the question game of when you do get to know you type stuff on the date, gradually escalating things in more sexual ways and letting her follow your lead. I think that should be an undertone on the date without overtly saying, let's play the question game. But that's what you want to do is you want to move it ever so gradually. So you're at purely platonic. You want to go to sex, right? If you're trying to be super sexual, there's going to be a rejection or an objection, she's going to move it back to platonic, or she might even get offended, right? But if you go like 5% sexual and then another 5 and another 5 and another 5 and another 5, you eventually get there. You get there a little more slowly, but you get there predictably and without a lot of rejections along the way. Okay, so that's going to be definitely your best path in most cases. I'm just gradually sexualizing the question. Is it true that when I reach a specific minimum value and comfort level of the girl I'm talking to, that she will go home with me 100%? Okay, so first off, and this is something you guys are going to hear from me over and over and over again on every webinar, always, and anytime I talk game pickup, anytime I talk life, to be fair. As soon as you say always, never, 100%, 0%, the answer is always no. Okay? Is there anything that's 100% in life? No. Okay? To be fair, even like on a molecular level, right? You don't know where like the atoms, or you don't know where the electrons are, in an atom 100%. There is this like probabilistic cloud, right? So even on a purely scientific level, we don't know anything 100%, right? I mean, there is a non-zero chance of me blipping out of existence in this like reality and popping into existence some quantum place far away as like a fully formed object. Now that the probability of that is like super, super, super astronomically small. It would never actually happen, but it is greater than 0% probability based on physics. Okay, so if you say is anything 100% or 0% when you're talking about human interactions, the answer is fuck no, not even close. Okay, so stop being so formulaic. Stop trying to think that game is such a science as that, and stop trying to think that like you have total control over everything or you can be perfect, because you can't. Okay, there isn't an always, there isn't a never, there's no 100%, there's no 0%. Okay, so first of all, disabuse yourself of that notion. And I know those of you who've been on a lot of these webinars have heard that speech before, you've heard that lecture before, but it's so important because thinking in gray areas is game. Okay, thinking in gray areas is essential for success in any area of life. But yeah, if you're thinking black and white, if you're thinking 100% and zeros, your model of the world is fucked. Okay, you need to accept the gray areas, and you need to understand that it's not just accepting some gray areas. The whole world is one big gray area with different shades. Okay, there's a very little in life that's black and white. Okay, so there's my little tirade on the 100% thing. But let's go to the general question. Is it true that when I reach a specific minimum value and comfort level of the girl I'm talking to, she'll go home with you? No, but kind of. Okay, there's other things you need to do. All right, so just because you have value and comfort with a girl does not mean she'll go home with you. You still have to ask. You still have to phrase the going home in a proper way. You still need to problem solve whatever logistics she has, right? You can have all the value and comfort in the world, and then, well, not all the value and comfort in the world, literally. So I suppose there is a threshold for that. But you could have a very high level of value and comfort with the girl, to the point where she would be very, very willing to sleep with you. But she's with friends, and her friends are, don't want her to go for other reasons, or she has to go to work for whatever reason, or whatever, right? There's these external factors and problem-solving factors to deal with. So in game, there's kind of two things that are happening. One is your relationship with the girl, and is she ready? Is she down? The second is her relationship and your relationship with the world, right? What is the situation? What are the problems that need to be solved? And basically, you guys, some of you will have heard this. Those of you who've been on immersions and stuff like that will have probably heard this. And I think it's in women for sure. But there's the idea of objections and conditions. Okay, so objections are when she has an emotional problem with it. She's not ready. She's not down. She doesn't like you enough. That would be this: she lacks value or lacks comfort, right? So that having value and comfort means that you won't get objections. Okay. However, there's another way of like resistance to something happening, which is the condition, which is there's an external factor. She's working, and her boss, she'll get in trouble with her boss. She's there with her parents, and she has to drive them home, et cetera, et cetera. So there's objections and conditions. So if you have value and comfort, the objections part of the game is solved, but you still have to solve the conditions part, which means you still have to problem solve. Okay, objections are solved emotionally, conditions are solved logically. All right, and so yeah, you've handled the emotional part of the game if you have value and comfort, but you haven't handled the logistics, you haven't handled the situation, you haven't handled the problem solving. And if you want to get laid, you have to handle that too. So if you have the value and comfort, you're halfway there. You're probably more than halfway there, to be fair. And in theory, what the thing I said before is that I said if you had all the value and all the comfort in the world, yes. I mean, there are situations where she likes you so much that she'll basically just say, fuck my logistics, I don't care. Okay? Like, I mean, I've had situations where girls like missed international flights to say and come home with me, right? I mean, that's pretty insane. It doesn't happen every day, but it can happen. So it's a situation where the level of value and comfort overcame the problem. So I have to problem solve. The problem solving happened for me. So in a theoretical sense, you could say that, yeah, if she's assigned you the status in her life of most important person on the planet, then yes, she would come home with you regardless of those things. But that's pretty unlikely to have happened in like a single interaction, like a first night type of interaction, right? It's happened a couple times to me, but it's not a regular thing, and it's not something you can count on. And if you are gaming with that as your model and trying to get that much of value and comfort, instead of just solving a simple problem, you're massively hurting your results. So even if that were true on a model type level, like a theoretical model level, you'd never want to game that way. It'd be a very, very poor actual practical model in the real world. So I hope that answers your question, both in terms of the whole black and white thing, and then in terms of the specifics of what value and comfort actually get you in set and what they actually don't get you. How do you ramble from a high value frame? Some sets I open the girl isn't giving me much to work with, and I have to ramble. I do well not caring about what she thinks, so I'm able to just talk about random things, but I'm not sure if it's coming from a high value frame. Okay, so I guess the way to start here is, what are high value frames, right? High value frames would be something along the lines of that you have value and she would like it, or something along the lines of you're cool and she would like hang out with cool people, or you're both very attractive, or things like assuming that girls like you as a premise and other things that you're saying. And the thing with all these is they're not necessarily, they're high value. They're things high value people would think. But the other thing they are is they're cocky, right? They're a little confident, and they're also related to you and her. So for me, the way that I ramble from a high value frame, as far as that goes, by the way, the premise here is that if you don't know what to say, a good answer to what to say is ramble. Just say whatever comes to your mouth while thinking from a high value frame. And for me, that's easy because I'm thinking in a high value frame almost all the time, right? So it just means just spit out whatever comes to my mind. But so the idea of these high value frames is, number one, they are a frame where it's a win for her. Like, you're better than her, at least equal to her, or you and she are maybe you're equals, but you're better than the other people out there, i.e., everybody else is looking at us and they're so jealous, right? That's a high value frame, right? Even though it's not saying you're better than her, it's saying you and I are better than the rest of this room, right? So there's an arrogance to it. There's a sort of arrogance and an idea that you stand out, or you and her stand out in some way. Okay, so that's part one. Part two is its relevance, right? Relevance meaning it's about you and her in some way, right? I'm trying to think of an arrogant frame that's irrelevant, but the point is you're kind of looking for both, right? It's arrogance and relevance is what is that successful high value frame. And what I don't really think of it as a high value frame anymore so much. What I'm really thinking is a frame that, if true, would lead to sex. So you're adopting a premise. You're putting something out there, and she can either accept it, which would be great, or she can shit test you and fight it. But the premise you're putting out there should be a premise that, if true, would lead to sex. That's what you're really going for. So instead of thinking high value, think, if this were true, would it lead to sex? And if that's the case, it's a good premise.